when the inability to steal. Even at the point of exhaustion, and when it comes to life and death situations, an elf would never admit to riding a mount. Even in the rare case of old age and in sickness, elves would refuse to ride about on a mount. It is sometimes said that most elves forgive the riding of mounts by other races, but this isn't entirely true. While they realize that it is customary for some other races to ride mounts, they still perceive it as a sign of weakness. It usually doesn't change much. However, as the pride and tribal nature of elves makes them think of others as weak to begin with. This aversion to beasts of burden does not extend to pack animals. Most elves have always and always will rely upon all manner of beasts to carry things around. Similarly, there is no aversion to using beasts as a source of food, as work animals, or in just about any other function other than riding. Actually, I haven't read this. Well, it's nothing I want to read. Perhaps. Well, I don't know. Dwarven roleplay. If you are going to play a dwarf, make sure that his or her focus is included in the character's background history submitted during character creation, and that you roleplay accordingly. As a tip, do not make your character's focus too specific. Somehow, well, this is something I should be reading first, but well, we'll get to that later. This is just a very short thing here. As a tip, do not make your character's focus too specific. It should be something that takes years, perhaps a lifetime to achieve. Dwarves whose origins are unknown typically attempt to find one single goal called a focus to which they adhere, and they will never abandon that goal for as long as they live, or until it is completed. When a dwarf feels the need to set himself or herself to a new, more difficult task than the last. Fear is generally not a lever that one can employ with dwarves, for they will not be shaken from their purpose, whatever it might be at the time, even if it means their death. A dwarf always thinks about their focus. That is what makes them fearless, not because they necessarily have a will of steel, although many do, and not because some genetic immunity to fear, but simply because they do not stop thinking about their focus long enough to be afraid. If a horde of raiders surround an unarmed dwarf, the dwarf will still be thinking about how they can free the slaves, or whatever their focus is. And so this supersedes any sort of anxiety, fear, panic, or other emotions relating to anything other than the focus. In the same way, a dwarf will be considering their focus every time they meet someone, thinking, how can this person help me or hinder me in achieving my focus? Exactly how cold-hearted this manipulation becomes depends entirely on the individual nature of a dwarf, but every dwarven player should be aware of its presence. There is no such thing as a random, useless encounter to a dwarf. Everything fits into the scheme of a focus, and the character should act appropriately. Very few dwarves are deceptive. The overwhelming nature of a dwarven focus makes all dwarves very single-minded. Deception requires subtle thought, lies and trickery. A dwarf has infinite patience and determination when it comes to their focus. It will be difficult for a dwarf to be deceptive, due to the subtle thought involved, but the dwarf will think about it for 7 years, and then they will know what they have to do. While an elf will use deception as a reflex, it is something that takes immense effort for a dwarf. If unprepared or surprised, a dwarf should not be deceptive, but the dwarf should by all means spend a long time dwelling on it, forcing the single-minded intelligence to think about being subtle, and then acting with absolute deception. More on dwarven focus. The dwarven focus is a single, overwhelming goal which motivates every thought and action in a dwarf's life. A dwarf may do things unrelated to their focus, but it will always be at the back of her head, nagging them. A dwarf will never do something contrary to their focus, ever. A dwarf likely does not refer to their focus in terms of "this is my focus." To them, it is entirely natural. The focus is what it means to be alive. The focus is not bothersome or alien to a dwarf at all. Dwarves would begin thinking that all beings are dominated by this same drive. If and when a dwarf discovers that others do not share this focus, they will probably become alienated, whatever, and possibly acquire a distaste for all non-dwarves. Although the interpretation and extent of this alienation and distaste depends on a dwarf's individual personality. Your focus should be grounded in the history and personality of your character. Since a focus is not an alien presence that comes upon a dwarf, but rather a natural feeling that is inseparable from them, the nature of their focus should arise from what comes naturally to them. Also, as a general rule, a focus should neither be impossible nor easy, but rather something that is possibly attainable over a long period of time if it is worked hard upon. The focus should be something your character is not close to achieving. The point of it is that you have to play through the attainment of the focus. This is a general rule, and in rare cases, foci which are either impossible or attainable more quickly may be appropriate. Focus attained. Yes, as a dwarf you can achieve your focus. It will be replaced with a new one. Keep in mind the natural way in which a dwarf deals with their focus when going through this. It will not be as if the character is thinking, I have one goal under my belt, what do I do now? To have a focus is to be a dwarf, but the focus is achieved, it is no longer thought of. Now the mind is turned entirely to other things. I don't think this description is clear on this, but I'm pretty sure they think or somehow acquire a new focus. I don't know exactly the mechanisms for that, but that's what I thought I read in the race thing here. Now the mind is turned entirely to other things. Similarly, a dwarf cannot go insane if they have no focus. A dwarf will never have no focus, even if that focus is finding a new one. Given that the original focus was the overwhelming nature of a dwarf's life, and given that a dwarf's focus arises from their natural tendencies, it is logical to assume that the new focus will be related to the last. And this is indeed what will happen in most cases. An extension, more difficult, of the original focus may become the new focus. I have freed myself from slavery to a cruel master, now I should free the other slaves. If you feel it would be more appropriate or more enjoyable yet still appropriate for your dwarf to have an unrelated focus, go for it. You should pay much attention to all the things that have happened to your character in the game when you consider a new focus, or indeed when you consider anything. And also there's focus in the gameplay, but it doesn't seem anything that's too important. Half-elves. Accepted by neither humans nor elves, half-elves tend to be extremely self-reliant and very proud of themselves on this trait. Half-elves try to do everything for themselves, such as hunting for their own meals and camping well apart from others that they are with. Despite this, half-elves typically try to gain acceptance by elves or humans and will go out of their way toward that end. In many ways, half-elves are on a continual journey to establish their personal identity. As a bastard offspring of conflicting cultures, it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, for a half-elf to be accepted anywhere. Humans see a half-elf as a product of the untrustworthy filth that is an elf, and elves see half-elves as weak and tribeless, and half-elves have no culture of their own. To make things worse, most half-elves have little or no support from their parents. They are typically formed by violence, whether it be a literal conception by rape, or the prejudice heaped upon those that raise or care for them. All of this combined with a genetic predisposition makes half-elves desperately strive for acceptance and identity. The heart of the half-elven personality is the tension between wanting acceptance and wanting independence. The two are really flip sides of the same coin. Because half-elves can never be fully integrated into either human or elven society, a half-elf's history is littered with memories of rejections and slights, both real and perceived. A half-elf's insistence on being self-reliant may be a way of rejecting others before they can reject him or her. While seeking acceptance, half-elves will often pretend to have no interest in it. What this creates is a vicious circle of behavior for the half-elf. Being unable to work well in a group, the half-elf goes out on their own, stepping away from society and seeking independence. Often this can cause trouble as the half-elf refuses to turn to others for help, and often sticks their head out into danger in a desperate attempt to prove independence. But they will stick with it, and with dedication and patience they will complete the tasks and hopefully live through the trials set before them. But with the short-term goal met, the need for acceptance will kick in. The half-elf will return to society, fresh with the tales and fruits of their labor. At this point, they will do anything to make others appreciate what they have done. For some time this will continue, as the half-elf seeks acceptance from whatever audience they have found, but before long that need for independence will settle in again. If the audience or society in general accepts the half-elf, respects their deeds, or otherwise welcomes them, this may be perceived as an insult to his independence. Also, this is pretty sexist to think that all half-elves are male. Sometimes anger will set in. Although they strive for this acceptance, they find it hard to accept it once it is given. So this forces the half-elf back out alone on their journey. On the other hand, if the half-elf is ridiculed, ignored, or turned away, all the worse. This just proves that they do not need others. They may be hurt and they may be angry, but they will still turn away and back into independence, and so the cycle continues. The way this conflict is played out in your character is up to independent interpretation. All half-elves are individuals and have their upbringing and personalities affecting things as well. But you should be aware of this conflict and work it into your character somehow. For some half-elves, it may be very much as described, with cycles lasting for seasons, 1 season for independence, 1 season of acceptance, and 1 season of independence. For most, however, this is just an analogy of how the half-elf's mind works at all times. The whole cycle can complete itself within the time of a single encounter, or sometimes it is not a cycle at all, but simply chaotically warring motivations that exist constantly. Humans. Human character is as broad as human ability. Virtually any sort of disposition can be found amongst humans, and humans are allowed the greatest latitude in inventing their personalities. For all intents and purposes, a human is able to become whatever he or she wishes to become without restriction. Okay. I read this much faster than when I actually had read it beforehand once. Something like twice as fast. It's ridiculous. I should read these once before I actually read them out loud, because otherwise I will be constantly looking at words I don't completely understand, or, well, I probably understand them but don't remember what they the exact meaning of them. Okay, gameplay, crime and justice next. Probably we will get more information about this in game, but it will be good to know the specific, not specific, but some general rules that I should really know about. While most of the known world is completely lawless, all centers of civilization possess some sort of penal code, and Alanak in particular. Since most of the population lives in these centers, the following applies mostly to them. Villages and outposts usually have scaled-down versions of these rules, and usually do not involve Templars. Bounty hunters that catch criminals can hand them over to the soldiers to avoid being reprimanded for obstruction of justice. The following are ways to become branded a criminal. Offend a Templar. Templars have complete power over who is and is not considered a criminal, and can accuse anyone of any crime whenever they wish, except other Templars, of course. The fact of any real crime or the existence or lack of evidence makes no difference. If a Templar says you are guilty, you are guilty. Be witnessed committing a murder. Citizens will report such crimes quite quickly to the Templars. Be warned, any room which says it is full of people is full of virtual NPCs who will report crimes. So there does not have to be an actual hard-coded NPC where to see your character's crime. Be seen committing a theft. See the rule for virtual NPCs under number 2. I should also read the rules for virtual NPCs, but I haven't yet.